Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. It's a beautiful day to do a press conference about the harbor. This is a very important issue, but I think it's one that's somewhat complex. It's evolved over at least 10 years, and we're going to try to lay it out in as linear a fashion as we can. But if y'all have any questions that come up, please don't hesitate to ask. The first point I want to make is that the point of this press conference is not to criticize the SBA's economic analysis because it was done by Al Parish, who's subsequently been indicted and pleaded guilty to defrauding investors. That is not, if that were the only problem with these studies, we wouldn't be here today. We are here because the SBA's entire rationale for spending hundreds of millions, potentially billions of dollars of public and private money, but mostly public money, mostly taxpayer dollars, on new facilities hinges on one study that was done by Al Parish in conjunction with the SBA in 2002. Got a forklift over here. The study has, as a result of that study, the federal government, the state government, local governments have committed hundreds of millions of dollars, environmental permits, public health has essentially been allowed and agreed to be compromised. And the problem with that is that the study is entirely and irreconcilably flawed. And it is flawed in a way, it is flawed for the same reasons that Mr. Parish's investors saw their investments vanish. We're here, the most important point is we're here to demand that the SBA conduct an open, objective, arm's length assessment of what the real economic impacts and alternatives to the expansion of the Port of Charleston. That has not been done. The numbers, as I said, that have come out of the Parish study were used to defend the request by the SBA for $167 million last year in the legislature for the new Port Access Road. They will be used this year to add another $140 million, taxpayer dollars that will not be spent on other important transportation projects in this state, for 1/4 mile essentially of road. The numbers have been used to justify the filling of salt marsh, to justify additional air pollution in this region, to points that public health and safety will be compromised. And the numbers are being used publicly to dismiss the other concerns of other businesses, tourism, real estate, and others in this region whose livelihoods will be impacted by an I-26 that is at gridlock. To fully understand the scope of the study and the problem of the study, it's important to point out the first and most important flaw, and that is, what was the question that was asked in this study? Now, it would logically seem that you would say, if you want to build a new terminal, what would be the result of not building that terminal versus building that terminal? That would be the common sense assessment. And it would also be logical to ask, are there alternatives to this terminal in this place? The Parish SPA study did not do either of those things. It asked this question: what would happen if the Port of Charleston closed down in 2002? What would happen to jobs in the state in 2035? Now, you don't have to be an economist to understand that that first of all, beyond being an unanswerable question, is a completely irrelevant question. What would happen if the Port of Charleston were to close down in 2002 to jobs in 2035? That's the question. The question that poses a similar question to one if you were to ask whether we should add 2 more lanes to I-26, and we posed it in the following way. What would happen if we ripped up I-26 to jobs in the state in 2035? It would be no more relevant than that. So the first and core problem with the study is it asked the wrong question. And it was that point, and I suspect none of you knew that, and I did not know that when the study first came out, and I will guarantee you the Chamber of Commerce did not know it, the legislature did not know it, and in fact I suspect even some of the SBA board members did not know that was the basis for the Parish SBA study. When the study was completed, it came out that there were 280,000 jobs that were dependent on the port. Today, it said. Now, that was actually a complete misrepresentation of even the conclusion of the study. What it did not say is the question we ought to be asking: does it make sense to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars on a terminal here? Do we need this terminal expansion? Would it be better to put it in Jasper County, where the private sector will pay for it? None of those questions were asked. We have tried over the last 10 years to get to the core of the work that the SBA has done, to the extent of meeting with Al Parish, meeting with Charleston Southern. This has been a few years ago. We have been blocked and prevented at every turn from getting the data that he used, the modeling that was done, the question of objectivity, which you'll hear Frank talk about in a minute. All of that has been blocked, obfuscated, obscured, and purposely so. We have even gone to the FBI to see if we could get data from the computer records that have been seized from Mr. Parish. But the bottom line here is that the state has been duped. It's been duped by a coalition, a collusion between the SBA management and an economist who is now discredited. So the question now is, what do? We need a new objective study. We need to lay out the parameters for the study, and the study ought to look at alternative options. It ought to look at the real question of whether, if this terminal is not built, the job impact will be negative, positive, or neutral in the state. The data needs to be kept. It needs to be available for review. The study needs to be replicable, like any study, any peer-reviewed study. And until that is done, we are asking the SBA to cease to spend public money on any new facilities, and this one included and especially. It makes a mockery of the whole question of economic analysis if we continue to move forward as the SBA has, using essentially fraudulent numbers and admitting that they are fraudulent themselves. The SBA has recently said, and I quote, if I can find it, that the study is no longer credible or valid. They need to repudiate it, withdraw it from the federal permitting process. They need to let the legislature know, they need to let the chamber know, and they need to let the public know.